Not live. Coming to you from the fabulous Sunset Strip in Hollywood, California, it's the Bob Dean Show. Yay. Want to welcome everybody for episode 52. 52 of the Bob Dean Show. Yay. And climbing. Let's see what's going on. I'll just get this out of the way first because I always forget at the end. Please subscribe to us on iTunes, The Bob Dean Show. Subscribe and encourage your friends. You can also listen to us on Stitcher, Stitcher, on your Android device. YouTube, thanks to Joe White now. You can watch us. This will be, I think, our 11th episode, right? Yes. That you can watch on video. And you can also, thanks to Zach Herndon. Hey, Zach. Yay. Zach. In Bloomington, Indiana, who puts us up on my website, bobthesurlycomic.com. I think I'm going to be, Cinda's back in town after her New York summer tour. So hopefully you'll be able to come see me and the rest of the gang at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood sometime in September. We'll keep you posted. And now back to episode 52. I want to welcome Dennis Alston over there. Hey, Dennis.
Hello.
The beautiful Kathy St. George is leaving for some touring tomorrow, so she can't be with us today. Sylvia Sage will be back with us soon. Hey, Sylvia. And I want to welcome Nicolas and Elena Koster. Yeah. Nick Koster. Now, I know all you people out there in Bob Dean land, I like that, already know who this dude is. Because the first time I met you, Nick, is you came in for cocktails with a mutual friend of ours, Janice Brown, to Wolfgang's about, 6, 7 years ago?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. And you sat down at the bar, and of course, who doesn't recognize you? And I'm like, I know this guy. And I didn't know, and you were just charming, and we've been buddies ever since.
But 7 years younger.
7 years younger. Well, we all were 7 years younger. I had more hair. No, don't worry, we'll wake you up. But you just won an Emmy for The Bay.
Last year.
Last year. Congratulations.
It's yesterday's newspaper.
Well, that's the Bob Dean Show. It's all yesterday's news. But it's yesterday's news with the coolest people ever, though. Right? Elena's just going to sit in with us tonight. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. I think last time I saw you guys was that fabulous cocktail party on your yacht. That was a great day. It was a pretty incredible day. Beth and I, you invited us over, and you live on a beautiful, are you still on that same beautiful antique boat?
Sorry?
Are you still on that beautiful antique yacht? It's a yacht?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boatmen, if they have, how shall I say, taste, they don't call it a yacht.
Well, that's what I figured. I knew it was, but
you can call it a yacht, but the guy that owns it isn't supposed to.
It's just a boat?
No, I have a boat.
But it's a 1950s
guy with a 180-foot boat. He calls it a boat.
But it's like an antique or classic, right? It's in a 50s or 60s model of. I'm not real sure up on.
Well, it's not per se an antique. I've had many antique boats, but this is just a classic and beautifully constructed.
It's stunning from when you're walking up the dock to see it. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, and Elena over there did a lot of the restoration.
Really?
With her own hands.
Awesome.
She looks excited about that.
Well, we're not supposed to get excited on this show, right?
No, you can get excited, but just whenever you hear my name is when everybody goes like, screw that clown. But it's a beautiful, beautiful vessel. And that one day that Beth Levino and I stopped over, and you had a beautiful cocktail party all set up, and it was a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Met some lovely people, and acted like I was really part of Marina Del Rey.
The yachting crowd.
Yeah, it was great. You have been an actor. You're from London. And
born there.
Born in London, and your father. See, all my notes are here, and I get so screwed because your whole history is so incredibly interesting to me.
Flooded.
What was your first, you started studying at what age?
Well, I went to the Royal Academy at 16.
At 16.
You know this guy, Lord Attenborough, who directed Gandhi, and he was then a West End actor, a young leading man. And my father was a leading film critic in England, and so Dickie Attenborough was his buddy. He said, is my son too young to go to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art? And by the way, I'm getting over laryngitis in case I sound like something between Edward G. Robinson and Humphrey Bogart. I flatter myself.
You're sounding all right to us, buddy.
So Attenborough said, no, I was the youngest one that ever went there. Well, as it turns out, I probably was too young. But I had a great time, and I learned a lot, and I got terrible grades, but they were very amused. Remember the film The King's Speech?
Yes.
In which there was a very proper English teacher who was trying to teach the king how to speak by putting wooden things in his mouth and all that. That was our teacher at the Royal Academy. Now, he took credit for teaching the king to speak. We never heard of that Australian guy. So he said, Nicolas, you are my cross to bear. He said, and they said, Mr. Costa, where did you contract that American accent? Because we know you're born here. I said, yeah, I was born here. I said, well, I contracted it with the influenza in 1918. They were not amused.
When did you come to the United States? At what age?
I came at the beginning of the Second World War. I was 5.5, and with my American mother, whose ancestors go back in Virginia to, 1681 or something.
No kidding. Mine too. I mean, I don't know how far. We're just getting ready to start the genealogy line, but I don't know if that we go back that far. But I do know from some family archives that were sent to me that I'm from the Densmore clan of Sullivan's Crossing, Virginia. I don't know what that means. We're working on it now, so we might be related.
No, that in 275 will get you on a New York subway.
That's right. Mm-hmm. But it sounds interesting. Well, see, I was thinking about that when I was looking over.
It's a New York joke. I'm sorry.
That's like I've been to New York before. I will be in New York in October too, y'all. So look for some open mics. But I was wondering about that because you were born right before the Second World War, and you left before the actual strikes in London and that sort of thing.
2 weeks before. My mother knew it was coming.
Really?
She knew it wasn't going to last 6 weeks, whereas everybody else, including Chamberlain, thought, no, it didn't last 6 weeks. My father quit his job as a leading film critic in England with 3 children. He didn't have to go. He could have been an air raid warden, But he joined the Royal Marines as a buck private. And then Lord Mountbatten found out he was there, and he said, Ian, come with me. I'm starting something called the Commandos. And he was in the first detachment of Royal Marine Commandos.
Oh, wow.
The guys that raided France with the black faces and all that stuff.
Wow, very impressive to the war effort.
In fact, my stepmom, his second wife, when I went over there to go to the Royal Academy, he didn't know I was coming. So I arrived, his second son, and we had a great time. I was very glad because I hadn't seen him in 10 years. And I was terribly glad. And we had an incredible year, and then I never saw him again. He died not long after that.
Oh, sorry.
But I asked his wife, I said, how did you guys meet? She said, well, he would come back from these commando raids, in blackface. Well, somebody had to scrub that face, didn't they?
And that's how they met.
So
how romantic.
Yeah. She was a sweetie.
I don't know where to start. You're just so impressive. And like I said, I knew that I'd seen you on everything before, but you've done your first movie was 1953. You were a seaman in the movie Titanic.
My first one was the Desert Rats, and the next week was the Titanic.
That's the Titanic.
The original Titanic.
Yeah.
That's great.
Did
with
you get
Barbara
out of the ship?
Stanwyck, Clifton Webb.
Yeah.
A young Robert Wagner, and some other guy was young. He had one line. Captain, the band is waiting on deck.
Wait, but still, man, that's really cool. But it's such a heartbreaking
But actually,
story.
that wasn't my first professional job. It was with the BBC. While I was at RADA, I did a job with the BBC about Elizabeth the Queen with a gal named Moria Lister. So that was only 67 years ago.
You've spanned 7 decades in your career.
Several
And
decades.
still going. And you know what else too? I love I just love theater. I wish I could. For what I've done, to everybody that listens to the Bob and watches the Bob Dean Show, yay, knows is that I've done a couple plays here in LA, but I just love it. And you have performed with Elizabeth Taylor and
Laurence Olivier,
Sir Laurence Olivier, and Michelle Lee. I just love Michelle Lee.
Yeah.
That's Lady was my favorite, and Seda Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She won a Tony. I was her leading man. Yeah, it was great. She was simply wonderful. I've been very lucky in the people I've played with and directed by Harold Pinter and stuff like that. I did 10 Broadway shows and 20 some odd off-Broadway shows. And then I was a founding member of 3 repertory companies, including the Guthrie in Minneapolis, which was kind of a high point. Because Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy played in our company, you know, and so that was something.
And you also taught at the University of Georgia?
Yeah, I still do.
You still do?
Yeah.
Wow.
How about them dogs?
Oh, I love them.
So how much time do you
I'm
spend?
very blessed in that. Years ago, I was married to a gal whose mother came from Athens, Georgia, and she knew I was bored sitting around the house. So she said, why don't you wander over to the university? Maybe you can talk to somebody. I did. And I talked to the head of the department then, and he said, you want to come and talk with us? I said, I'd love to. So I was preparing a play by Samuel Beckett called Krapp's Last Tape. It's a one-man show about a guy who's sitting in one room listening to tapes of his life, and then obviously records the last tape of his life. And it's a brilliant, brilliant play. And I did that, and they said, would you like to come back here on a regular basis? And I said, yeah, but I don't have a degree. And he said, you don't have to. You got the equivalent of 2 doctors. However, the present chairman of the department, that chairman, he retired. The present chairman had to stick by the rules a little more. So I couldn't be an adjunct professor anymore because I didn't have a degree. So now I'm a visiting lecturer.
But still influencing with the same influence?
Wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome.
I teach 10 classes in 1 week. My beloved Russian over there came and watched me last year, and she actually thought I was okay.
He did all right?
He was perfect.
Ah. Well, now, how much time do you spend in Athens then? When do you go? Like
A week solid.
a week solid?
9 classes in 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And the humidity there. And of course, the B-52s, yay, are from Athens, Georgia. You have to be a B-52s fan.
I actually, the more famous group is REM.
That's right, REM and B-52s. And they've also done
I
work
guess
together.
they're not more famous than the B-52s. No.
They're more famous, but the B-52s, I mean, I love REM, don't get me wrong, but the B-52s are just like the coolest in the world. So you were an original pioneer soap opera actor too, huh?
Yeah?
You big heartbreaker, the housewife heartbreaker, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
I'm writing an autobiography, and it's very difficult because my father and mother were both very good writers, and so I like Updike and writers like that and style, beautiful style. I am a stylist. I'm just trying to write the stories, and one of them has to do with that, which is remind me of what I just was talking about.
Writing and soap operas and
Soap opera.
your parents.
So the first soap opera I ever got, I was in a play with Laurence Olivier called Beckett on Broadway, and I was his standby. So I didn't have to work very hard after we opened. One quick story about Laurence Olivier, for those of you who are probably too young to remember. He was considered, if not the greatest actor in the English language, certainly one of the top 3, including John Gielgud and so on, and Ralph Richardson. But Olivier, I was helping him learn his lines because he was switching characters. So, and he said to me, stop, and he said, Nicolas, do you have any relatives in England? I said, well, my pop, he was sort of well known, but he's not with us any longer. He said, Olivia said, not Ian Costa. I said, yeah. He said, why the didn't you tell me? And I said, well, the rest of the company kind of were like this with you, with the nose somewhere implanted. So I thought I might be the exception. And so that's one of the stories.
That is
in the
great.
book. And the last one I'll tell you. I said, are all those stories about you apocryphal or are they true? He said, if they were witty, they were true.
What an honor.
Oh, he was something. He was something. We got along so famously, so that he was marrying Joan Plowright. And we gave, the wedding reception was on stage before a matinee, as I remember. And I was asked to give the toast. And when I got up, I was born privileged in England and all that stuff, but I couldn't remember what was correct, whether because Vivien Leigh was still alive, she was still Lady Olivier, or Joan Plowright was about to become Lady Olivier. And I brought up my glass and said to Sir Lawrence and Lady Olivier, and he caught the pause. I saw it. And he came up to me after and he said, Nicolas, that was very quick of you.
Very good.
He said, you were actually right. Vivien is now Vivien Lady Olivier, and Joan is now Lady Olivier. I said, thank God for Henry VIII. Some of the Broadway. I want to talk for a minute
Please.
about my experience in the African American theater in America. I was very proud to be a part of all that renaissance. And I did a play called Blood Knot, the first South African play ever to have an integrated audience. And they were arrested, but they persevered. James Earl Jones created the part in New York. And then I came in 3 weeks later. J.D. Cannon played my part. There was a story about brothers, but they happened to have the same black mother and different white fathers. And the white-skinned brother returns home a failure and shattered and confronts his working brother. And they find a way to make it work. And that's the play Blood Knot. So I played that most of the run with Lou Gossett. And I played it before with Yaphet Kotto, a brilliant actor. And then when I came out here, after that, I played it with a great actor named Rupert Cross. And he was simply the greatest actor I've ever been on stage with. I'll give you one example. It was a very emotional play. But it had great comedic moments, too. But this was a particularly emotional scene where he was across the table, and I was you, and that was the audience, and Rupert was over here. And it was so emotional that we heard a guy started sobbing and heaving in the audience over my left shoulder, and I turned, and then I looked at Rupert, and Rupert was about 6'3" with these long, long fingers. And he just raised his hands like this. And the entire audience and I, of course, stopped. And then he turned to the man and he reached out from the stage and drew the man to himself. And the man stopped crying. And the audience understood. 45 years later, it gets me still.
Of course.
That's just beautiful.
The greatest moment I've ever had in the theater.
Wow.
Yeah, it was something.
I don't know what to say about
And
that.
that was a play in New York. Cicely Tyson was upstairs doing a play. James Earl was down the street doing another play by then. It was just a renaissance. Our stage manager, Charles McRae, started the Negro Ensemble Theater, from which came Robert Hooks, among other good actors. It was just dynamite. It was simply dynamite.
Did you ever work with Sidney Poitier on any level, or even know?
I
Wow.
called the gentleman director. We worked on Stir Crazy, this
Oh, yeah.
insane fucking film. It was just marvelous. And every time I see him, he says, "Oh, hello, Nick. Hello, Nick," with such fondness. And he asked me to do it. It wasn't a very big part. It was a crazy prison warden. But there was another part, there was a bigger part that he'd already given to another crazy prison warden. But I was a little crazier, but not as much to do. And we just had a wonderful time. And Richard Pryor and I hit it off like that. He came flying in on his helicopter in New Mexico, landed, got out, came out and looked at, he said, "Nick Coster, I love your work, man."
Right on.
And we got along. Years later, I was standing in line to see him at the comedy club. And the Rolls Royce pulls up, he jumps out, he goes, "What you doing standing in line?" They're waiting for you, man. He's like, "Come on." I went in. From the stage, he said, "There are two incredible performers I want to salute tonight. Sammy Davis, Nicolas Coster."
Wow.
Now that's class.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, now I'm hoping you'll come to my next show because you can get me past the line to get in. Wow, that's crazy cool,
A
Nick.
couple of theater stories.
What are your favorite films that you've done? There's just such a
Well, All the
list.
President's Man speaks for itself because it happened to be the great American film,
Yep.
particularly on that subject. Now, I have seen two very good films since. What is Reiner's film? Is it Awe and Shock? Awe and Shock?
Shock and awe.
Well, the shock comes first. Yeah,
Yeah.
Shock and Awe. Rob Reiner has directed a film that's the best film about journalism I've seen since All the President's Men, and in some ways, even more true.
Wow.
It is simply it's a current film, so I beg you to see it. And he said from the stage that he'd offered the part to what's his name who plays Trump on Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
no names, but yeah. And he said he turned him down. Oh, no, he didn't turn him down. He accepted, and then he didn't.
Didn't hold
Something
up.
happened a week before, and they had no time to cast. So Reiner played the part, but he is simply, I can't imagine anybody better. Rider News was the only news company who actually covered the failure of Vietnam and had it out there, and nobody picked it up. Later on, Mrs. Post, which is another fine film with Meryl Streep about the Washington Post and how they eventually did carry the story of how we knew we were not going to win that war, and we kept getting guys killed. So there's some wonderful movies. So All the President's Men was one. My beloved son, who left us last year,
I'm so sorry.
he did a film and it went to not Sundance, Sun Blast, Sunflake, no, Slam Dance. And he was simply wonderful in it. And I played an old Vietnam crazy man on a subway. And I rather liked that part.
Well, I'll look for that.
And let's see, I don't know. There were a number of films, but nothing quite like the theater.
I wish I had the opportunity to see you on stage.
You remember Roscoe Lee Brown?
Yeah.
He had created the part on just off Broadway in an American play by the great playwright Robert Lowell called Benito Sereno. And it was a true story about it was written in a diary by an American sealing ship as opposed to a whaling ship. They were hunting seals in the Caribbean, and they come across this ghost ship. The crew's all dead, and they're slaves who are running wild all over the ship. And there's one educated guy who's obviously taking control, but they're starving. So this American captain gives them food and starts to have these meals and meetings to figure out how to. The slaves all want to get back to Africa. That's the reason they started this thing, and I'm not allowed to do that, and it eventually. But it was such a superb experience from beginning to end. Roscoe Lee Brown is one of the greatest actors, again, that I've ever been on stage with. He was, Roscoe Lee Brown, for those of you who don't remember, he was on The Cosby Show very effectively. He was an African American. His father had been a military officer. He was a preacher, a chaplain in the Army. Roscoe spoke beautifully. He had with an almost Oxonian clarity.
I always remember him because of his interesting hairline. And he's a shorter fellow, and he's got kind of a round face, but he's got that remarkably, what do you call it, noticeable, it stands out hairline. Distinctive, yes.
Yeah.
And he's just eloquent in every word that he says.
Nice euphemism.
Every word that he says.
So he said, we were talking one night, we had the same dressing room, and the stories, oh my God. I said, how long have you had his Caribbean accent? You know, because he did a mock Caribbean. I asked him, I said, Roscoe, what do you do with your demons? He said, I go to the window, I open it, and I say, come in. So he was telling me how he got. He said, we were talking about people we know, and I was talking about, I had taught John Kennedy Jr. how to scuba dive.
I saw that in your, okay.
And so I knew his family. They were terribly nice and very welcoming. And they came to see my plays. But I invited Jacqueline to come and see Benito Sereno, in which I end up killing Babu Roscoe. And I'd forgotten when I invited her all about that. So she was a little nervous at the end of it. But while we were talking one night, I was telling him about I Love the Dance. And when I was a young man in Hollywood after the Royal Academy, I couldn't get arrested. So except in a couple of films. So I worked at Bob's Big Boy, and I fell in love with a girl at Pomona College. So
you worked at Bob's Big Boy too, on top of everything else?
Ace. I was the ace. I could make 18 big boys quicker than anybody else. And a couple of the car hops.
On roller skates.
No, we didn't have roller skates. We had little pillbox hats, I remember. Yeah. So, where was I?
We were talking about you invited Jacqueline Kennedy to see the show, and
so I would rave about the dance in the 50s here. Nora Kay did the original Fall River Legend at the Greek Theater. Jerome Robbins and they did Fancy Free here with his original choreography with him dancing it. Wow. And in Lester Horton's dance studio were two black gods, Alvin Ailey and Carmen de Lavallade. And I loved her. I fell in love with her the minute I saw her. So I'm talking away about her. And I said, I've never met her, never seen her. And one afternoon, Roscoe said, Nicolas, I have a treat for you this afternoon. Now, Roscoe had been the fastest half-miler in the world in 1952.
really,
And he got to know a young congressman named John Kennedy. And they stayed friends till the end. And Roscoe said, well, I said, well, that's interesting, Roscoe, which I knew this. I said, I have a treat for you. And into the dressing room after the show, this tiny little dressing room, comes Jacqueline Onassis and Carmen de Lavallade, one of the greatest dancers in history. And it was incredible. It was just marvelous. And a couple of weeks later, I was invited to tea at Jacqueline Onassis' apartment. And there sitting to have tea with Jacqueline and me was Dame Margot Fonteyn, the greatest British dancer in history.
Wow.
And she said, oh, I'm a great fan of yours. I said, what?
Wow.
I said, how does that happen? She said, well, you know, I watch telly, and I see you're very, very good. You're very good. So, back to the soaps. About that time, a little later.
Love
a little
this
later.
guy.
No, earlier. I did Young Dr. Malone. Now, Richard Chamberlain, a buddy of mine from Pomona College, had created a sensation.
Richard Chamberlain went to Pomona College?
Yeah.
No kidding.
And he's a lovely man to this day. Now, he had created Young
Young
Dr.
Doctor.
Kildare. So NBC wanted a daytime. So Matt Steele, Dr. Matt Steele.
Now, soaps started, what, in the early 60s or
Yeah.
late 50s into the early 60s, right?
Yeah, and I got on there in '61.
Okay. Because that was, because I'm
They
from
started in
the-
the '50s.
Yeah, because we were talking about this briefly. I'm from the stay-home mom generation, and I can remember mother ironing and watching General Hospital and Secret Storm and Guiding Light. I mean, not consecutively like all day long, you know.
I went from Young Dr. Malone, and we did the first color version of a soap opera, and it was bizarre. They were panicking all over because they couldn't match all the colors right all the time. So it would be gray, and it would be pink, and it would be blue. And
No, but doing soaps, wasn't that sort of like doing theater in some way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
yeah.
they weren't live, but you had to, what did you get your script the day before? Or
Many times.
yeah.
Yeah, and I pulled some of the great boo-boos and all the time. I shouldn't tell you because when and if I ever finish this autobiography, I'm going to want you all to buy it. So I'll tell you one story. There's on Young Dr. Malone, we had a lot of radio actors, and they were perfect in everything. They weren't all terribly good actors, but they'd get the lines out, and they'd look at you, they'd read the line, and then they'd drop, and then come back. Well, we had this guy named Martin Blaine, and he was perfect all the time. He'd always go, and he'd walk off. Now, we had a big scene where the sheriff was supposed to come in and draw a gun and arrest people in his mansion having a gambling party, an illegal gambling party. So the sheriff came to the door, knocked on the door, but he had trouble getting his pistol out of his holster. So when Martin opened the door, he was standing there and he went, and Martin said, he looked at the cameraman and he went like this, so the cameraman would be on him, and he walked slowly, taking forever while everybody's standing there waiting, going, while sheriff is going, He forgot totally one line. And Martin walked over to him and he went, is this a raid? Well, I want to tell you, the whole place fell apart. On air. They went to black. They had to go to black. Everybody was The director came right and I said, Martin, you son of a bitch, what are you doing? And my greatest boo-boo was on A Secret Storm. I was the first college professor ever to have dealings with a student. And it was
That was racy,
it was
too.
not a predator thing. It was complete love, of course.
Of course, it's a soap
But
opera.
we were investigated by the United States Senate for immorality on television.
What was this, 1964, 65?
64. And that, in those days, you couldn't say pregnant. You had to say with child. And married people couldn't be in the same bed.
Right.
They had to be in separate beds. So I came in, and we had trouble financially. And Jada Rowland, this brilliant young woman who played Amy, she's sitting there with her mama, played by Laurie March. And I had to come in and announce that the newspaper, the seat of the whole Ames family, had been sold. And I came in, and I really prepared to be upset, and I was upset. And Jada said, "What's the matter? You look awful." I said, "I have terrible news." She said, "What?" I said, "The house has been sold." And Jada went, "What?" I said, "What did I say?" She said, "You said the house has been sold." I said, "I'm so upset. Of course I meant the newspaper." And she said, "Of course you did."
Of course
By
you
that time, they
did.
couldn't put the camera on her. So,
Well, you know, I'm so sorry
story.
that Kathy St. George, who's a co-host of the show, and she's a blast. She was in Santa Barbara. She was in the opening scenes. She was one of the highfalutin people with the champagne cocktail.
Oh,
She's a
yeah,
beautiful blonde.
Yeah.
And but that's just 6 degrees of separation here on the Bob Dean Show. Yay! All the right people are on the Bob Dean Show.
Yay.
Thank you. But yeah, that's hilarious. So, and you did soaps up until what? The late '80s?
Oh, I did them until
Because you were on every. I mean, you
Yeah,
were
I
back and
hold-
forth on.
I actually hold the record. I've done 10 of them, leading parts on 10 shows. A dubious distinction, albeit,
Well, it is.
but maybe Guinness Book of Records.
Who was
I'm
your?
not going to make it for the 100-yard dash, except getting away from one colonel in the Army.
Who was your most villainous character in the soaps?
And a song? Well, there were two. On One Life to Live, I played Anthony McConaughey, the restaurateur, the gangster gentleman. They had a kind of, I won't say cliche, but it was, what's his name on Days of Our, what was it, Days of Our Lives, did it awfully well. Joe Muscola.
Mm-hmm.
He did that part very well. They did a kind of run off of that, and I said, "Nah, I don't think so. Not for me." So why don't you let me be a guy who's been to Princeton? I didn't want to be like my father, but I ended up like my father, despite that.
Right.
Oh, they love that.
Yeah,
So-
which is kind of a
so
character
that's
twist for a lot of things like that. Where, like
Yes.
the bad egg would have a
Yeah.
son or daughter that
Almost
would,
good.
go out. Yeah,
Almost
yeah.
went straight,
Right.
and then went, how come I'm going straight? I can make more money doing what my father did.
Under the
That
table
was
stuff.
right.
So I had Delilah as my girlfriend, and who was the other one? Beautiful Doreen Lapinto played her, Samantha. And that was great. And then he called me to come and do Santa Barbara. So I did that. Now, the reason I went back to One Life to Live is I cut my arm off. It was dangling, loose, hanging.
real?
For real.
Oh, what
In real life.
Were you in a car accident?
Huh?
Was that a car accident that you?
No, I walked through a glass door in my own house. I had an antique house in Hollywood, and the one thing I hadn't fixed was the door. And I came back from the pool, and there was no light on in the den, and I walked right through it. My daughter said it looked like Pluto. It walked through the,
Wow.
but a big guillotine piece came down and went boom. So it was paralyzed. And that was in '87. I wasn't a young man then. And the doctor said, I said, "You think I'll ever get it back?" And it didn't move at all. And he said, "At your vintage, I'm not sure you'll get nerve regeneration." I said, "Really?" I got in the pool. I invented water aerobics. I'm not kidding. I really did. Ask any water aerobics teacher who, if they ever started before 1987. I don't think so. Because I made a big show of it. I was in there with my cast on, in my pool doing exercise, and chugging vitamin B1, which is a nerve food. A year later, I felt tingling.
No kidding.
And so I said to my agent, I said, well, I can't really do anything because it's hanging there. Oh, I could go back to daytime. I remember some of those guys, they put their hands in one pocket and go, and they act like that. I could be one of those guys. They got me a job on One Life to Live. And Bob Woods, the immortal Bob Woods, who played Bo on One Life to Live, he said, Nicky, I don't believe it. A friend of mine gave me an AR-15 when they were still fashionable, before all these terrible murders. And I had, in New York, I had to get it out, so I had it in my dressing room and all broken in pieces. And Bobby Woods was an ex-Green Beret from Vietnam, a hero, a real hero. I was in the Army, but I wasn't there. He was. He said, Nick, I don't believe I've ever had a roommate before who had an AR-15 and a boat propeller in the dressing room. This great boat propeller, this big, because I was restoring yet another wooden boat out in City Island. So that was the hoot. I loved that show. I loved every actor on it.
So, but at what point did you feel like, because I never would have guessed you had had such an injury.
It came back.
That's just beautiful.
During that show, it came back. Yeah. So I could never play the bass clef again, but
at least you can wave and flip people off on the freeway. That's essential. That's essential Los Angeles living, both of those things.
I reach over.
Well, we were talking about boats, and you had not the Harmony, I said the Harmony. Don't tell me. The Emerald. Okay? Now, the Emerald was the boat that Dennis Wilson lived on. I hate that. Okay, thanks. No, she's just showing us the time, and it just flies by here on the Bob Dean Show. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, explain the story to me again.
Okay.
Dennis Wilson,
the Beach Boy,
right,
was having problems, and they took away his boat called Harmony, which was next to this boat, Emerald, which was a 58-foot classic sailboat from 1924 that I restored. But this was before that, when it was still beautiful. Before that. And then, I guess, after they took, his wife then had dumped some of his stuff overboard.
Right, she was throwing all his stuff over.
So he put on a mask and snorkel and said, I'm going down and get some of my stuff. He went down the first time, he came up. The second time he said, if I don't come up this time, I'll be in a bar down the way. And he was a practical joker, and they thought he meant it. They went down looking for him in the bar. He wasn't there. So that was the first I heard of Emerald. But then I saw her sitting there for years. And I went, I want that boat. And so I got that boat, and I restored it. And it was simply beautiful. And we took hundreds of veterans out. I have a foundation called challengesfoundation.org. I eventually turned it over to a guy in the sheriff's department, a very wonderful guy. I figured, at my age, maybe I should give some of the responsibility. So now Dave Scheinfarb and his wife and several other people run Challenges Foundation. But unfortunately, the boat was pretty, whoever had done the restoration before me had not done it properly. And so there was a weakness, and it sank at the dock. And as far as I know, it has not been restored since. So that's the sad tale.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. It was one of the most beautiful sailboats you've ever seen. Just perfect lines. It was just, and it sailed like a dream.
Well, would you remember your first boat?
My first boat, yes, I do. Yeah, I was in an off-Broadway play, and a friend of mine wanted to buy an engine for his 1911 boat. We went out to City Island, New York, and we found an engine for his, and I saw this derelict sitting in the yard, a 34-foot wooden Marblehead. I said to the guy, And Joe Kalinsky owned the yard. I said, what's with that boat? He said, it's a piece of it. And I said, well, should I get a hold of it? And he said, what are you, crazy? Mm-hmm. And I said, how much you want for it? He said, I don't know, a couple $100. I gave it. I rebuilt it. We went to Hudson. I don't have time for one more story. I got a great boat story for you. Next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we go out in the Hudson. I had a German guy who'd been shot in the back on the Russian front, and he was a mechanic, but he lost his leg later in an industrial accident. So he'd get down to work in the engine room and put his plastic leg up, his pink leg, would stick it out the engine room. So we're out in the Hudson one day. The boat breaks down. I got Henry with me. I said, hey, Heinrich, come here, fix it, you know. So he took out his leg and stick it up there. The Manhattan cruisers came by. You know? The captain goes, he screeched on it. You're gonna, should I call the Coast Guard? I said, no, it's just Henry's leg. You know. Promise that's my last one.
Oh, man, you know what? We're damn out of time again. Because here at the Bob Dean Show, yay. We had to, I don't know what to say, Nick. I mean, thank you so much for coming on. And I hope you will come back on again really soon.
Thank you.
Because there's a lot
Not
more.
too soon,
Why not?
for your sake.
Oh, no. Well, no, because this has just been fascinating. Just, it was just great. Great. Fascinating. Because I've got a million more questions now. A million more questions about a million more things. And I'm just proud we're friends. You're a good egg. And your lovely wife is over here. She's just smiling at you with all that love.
I'm still working. What's the show that's coming on in January? It's on right now, winning prizes, Golden Globes and Emmys and everything.
The better thing.
Yeah.
Better Things? Excellent.
Oh, I work with this Paula Adam. She's the most brilliant director. I can't even describe how good she is. She got a bunch of 80-year-olds together and made a scene of it, just sitting back there in the restaurant, just going, could you a little bit like a fine conductor, never raised her voice. Nobody on a set, for those of you terrible first directors who yell and scream, quiet on this set, when an actor's trying to prepare, you know. All right, roll it. You know, I'm sorry, did I just blow the sound?
You're just a delight, Nicholas Coster.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming.
Will you be on? Come and see us again real soon, and I hope you'll come see my Laugh Factory show the next time I'm up there.
Well,
All right, and bring your lovely wife, Lena.
come
And
to the boat.
yeah, when's the next cocktail party? I'll bring a quiche or something.
I have to get over all my present ailments.
Well, when you're feeling up to it, I'm gonna because you know I remember where your boat's moored, so I will crash the
Oh,
party.
it's different now. Now we're
Oh, did you
getting
move?
evicted and moved out, but we got another place in an even better marina.
Oh yeah.
But I'll give it a place
All right.
where it is.
Well, I guess we're wrapping it up then for episode 52 of the Bob Dean Show. Yay! Thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Elena, for being with us
Thank
today.
you. Thanks for the invite.
Are you kidding? Thank you very, very much.
Come back.
Come back. And you
I'm
know that.
totally unresponsive, as you can tell.
Now, don't forget to tell all your highfalutin, influential friends all over the world in acting and everything else to listen to the Bob Dean Show and watch the Bob Dean Show on YouTube. And any of them and after seeing this, if any of them want to come on, please bring them on. But yeah, watch us on YouTube. Thank you very much. Download us, subscribe on iTunes, please. Listen on Stitcher or the Bob Dean Show or bobthesurlycomic.com. Yay. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Nick Coster. Yay.
Ba-ding.